are ready to go. Hi, everybody. I'm Corinne Corbett, Editorial Director of Black Health Matters, and it is an honor and a privilege to be here with you tonight. Um, it is my pleasure to welcome you on behalf of the President and founder of Black Health Matters, Rosalynn Young Daniels, and the entire Black Health Matters family to this important conversation. We are very grateful to the organizations who have partnered with us for tonight's program. Dr. Angela Jourdain of Chi Eta Phi Sorority Incorporated, Valerie Bird, the chapter president of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women of Columbia, South Carolina, and Navis Johnson from the National Alumni Association of Spelman College, South Florida chapter, along with the Obesity Action Coalition. Each of our community partners will offer brief remarks before we begin our program. Let's start with Dr. Jourdain.
Greetings and welcome. I'm Dr. Angela Jourdain. I proudly serve as the 20th Northeast Regional Director of Chi Eta Phi Sorority Incorporated. On behalf of our dynamic board of directors, which is also present, all of the members of the Northeast region, and all of the brothers and sisters of Chi Eta Phi who have joined us, I want to say welcome. I would like to thank our community partners for this opportunity to address chronic weight management. We all should be aware that health disparities in communities of color are partly due to the fact that for many years, we have not received not only equitable care, but culturally inappropriate education on how to manage health issues. So we are excited that we are able to partner with our community partners tonight in the execution of our motto, Service for Humanity. Before I close, I just want to say shout out to my Spelman sisters, as I am a graduate of Spelman College, class of 1989, to shout out all of my brothers and sisters of the Divine Nine, and a super special shout out to the dynamic, devastating divas of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, of which I am also a member. Thank you and kudos to our presenters, and we hope that you all enjoy the program. Thank you.
Thank you, Black Health Matters. It is a pleasure to partner with you once again. Good evening, everyone. My name is Valerie Bird. I am the chapter president for the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, Columbia, South Carolina chapter. I bring you greetings on behalf of our national president, Virginia Harris, as well as our board of directors and members. NCBW is a 501(c) nonprofit organization that has over 60 chapters across over 25 states. Our coalition's mission is to advocate on the behalf of Black women and girls, provide leadership development and gender equity in the areas of health, education, economic empowerment, as well as public policy, legislation support, and advocacy. Our vision is to see that Black women and girls live in a world where social, economic inequity does not exist. NCBW is concerned with the well-being of the whole community and the whole person, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. One of our health advocacy focus areas is family and childhood obesity. Our priorities is to raise awareness of health disparities and solutions, as well as provide access to health care and wellness information. We invite you to join us again for future events hosted by NCBW, as well as Black Health Matters, because Black health does matters. And a special warm regards to my lovely blue and white family of Zeta Phi Beta sorority. Thank you, everyone. Help us continue to help our communities. Thank you.
So I'm going to read the statement. In operation since 1914, the Spelman Graduates Atlanta Club has evolved and is now known as the National Alumni Association of Spelman College. We would like to thank the South Florida chapter under the leadership of Ms. Navis Johnson for joining us as a community partner tonight for this second webinar. Now, before we begin, just a little bit of housekeeping. Everyone will be in for this online discussion. All attendees are in listen mode only. At the conclusion of the presentations, the Q&A will open for you to submit confidential questions. Following our event, resources will be made available for anyone who would like more information. Tonight, we're going to kick off our discussion with Keisha Callicott's journey. Let me share a little bit about Keisha. She's our patient advocate. Keisha is a dynamic educator specializing in special education and a passionate health advocate. She is a founding member of the Obesity Action Coalition's Diversity and Inclusion Task Force, a disease experience expert panel member with Novo Nordisk, and a board member of the Educator Collective. When she isn't jet setting around the globe, spreading the word about equity in healthcare. You can find her making music for her students, hiking with her family, or scolding her two disobedient stepdogs. Keisha, the virtual stage is yours.
Hello, thank you for that warm welcome. I'm Keisha Callicott. I was born into a warm, loving family, a normal-sized baby, but fun fact, I was actually supposed to be a boy. I wasn't overfat, but technically overweight. And actually, one of the most traumatic experiences of my life was getting lined up in PE, and they weighed all of us. And I will never forget, I weighed 144 pounds. I was bigger than everyone. And while I never forgot it, my classmates never let me forget it. Middle school, I had a relatively normal trajectory, orchestra nerd. But I'm in high school, I'm dating myself with this Kate Moss reference. Um, I had a sustained weight loss to fit my body into that particular standard. And the weight loss, it was not healthy at all. Through college, gained the freshman 15, gained and lost, gained and lost, gained and lost. I probably did that at least 4 times. I married my college sweetheart and gained the I's married now weight, which, you know, if you look at studies, that is one of the points where we do tend to gain weight. But pregnancy is where it really took off for me. I actually gained weight before I knew I was pregnant. Um, Went to put on some pants and they didn't fit. And I told myself, if these pants don't fit by next week, I am going to go to Weight Watchers. Well, the day that I was going to go to Weight Watchers is actually the day that I found out I was pregnant. I gained about 70 pounds, had a 10-pound baby, and I only lost 10 pounds. But post pregnancy is where my weight kind of got out of control. Um, I breastfed, but I didn't lose weight. You know, in Hollywood, they say that they slimmed down because they did breastfeeding, and that didn't happen for me. I did not have the Hollywood experience. I had the Fort Worth, Texas experience. But my biggest turning point was when my son was about 2 years old. He was eerily quiet, and I knew in my gut that something was wrong. And I went to my bedroom window, and the screen was pushed out. So I opened the door, and there he was at the end of the sidewalk. And he turned around and he laughed at me and he ran. But no matter how hard I ran, how fast I ran, he just kept getting further and further away from me. And it was kismet or divine intervention that a neighbor about 4 houses down happened to come out at that exact time and scoop him up. But I still get really shaken up thinking about the fact that my body didn't allow me to be physically present for my son, for me to even protect my son. And I continued to gain weight and I pretty much cut myself off from the world. A lot of people don't even know that my weight was what it was during that time. But the weight of obesity is heavy. People think that people with obesity are lazy. No, people with obesity are tired. You're tired from actually the physical weight. You're tired from wondering what will people think. The fear of, will I fit into this space? Will this chair support me? It's a very draining way to live. So I decided that I would have the sleeve 14 years ago. And I have had a sustained weight loss with low carb, getting activity, hiking. I love hiking with my family. But one of the biggest factors in my success is my family support. That is just, it's just the biggest thing. But like a lot of people, when the pandemic hit, my weight started to climb again. I was in the comfort of my home. We didn't go out. We were actually scared to go out, living with depression and eating more and drinking more. And I probably gained about 30 to 40 pounds during the pandemic. But recently, since January of this year, I have tweaked some things and just gotten into a new plan that I've lost all of the pandemic weight. But one of the things that has been instrumental for me has been time controlled eating. And I joined a boot camp. One of the things they asked me was, how much weight do you want to lose? And it's like, it's not what I want to lose, it's what I want to gain. I want to gain energy. I want to gain friendships. So many of us are like, well, once I'm home, I am not leaving. But who said that had to be a rule? Like, I wanted to gain ownership back over my life. And with the changes that I made, I certainly have. And I'm right back full circle. But the important thing is that treating obesity is not a journey. A journey implies that there's a destination, that there's an end. Uh, Treating obesity is a never ending.
Keisha, thank you so much for sharing your story, your learnings, your insights, and your excitement about the journey. Now I'd like to introduce our medical presenter. Dr. Terrellyn Scott Winfield earned her medical degree from Baylor College of Medicine in Houston, Texas. She then completed her residency in internal medicine from Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, Maryland, and a fellowship in gastroenterology at UT Southwestern in Dallas, Texas. She's board certified in gastroenterology and obesity medicine, is a member of the American Gastroenterological Association, the American College of Gastroenterology, the American Society of Gastrointestinal Endoscopy, and the Obesity Medicine Association. Her special interests are inflammatory bowel disease and weight regain after bariatric surgery. Welcome, Dr. Scott Winfield. The virtual stage is yours.
Thank you so much for having me. And again, I'm very excited to speak with you about something I'm very passionate about, and that is weight management. I'm excited about continuing the conversation that we started a few weeks ago. And so today's topic is the patterns of obesity, as in how do we get here? But some additional taglines are, why can't I lose weight? Or why did I gain weight again? So we're going to follow a journey of a hypothetical patient who kind of is a composite of some patients that I see in my practice. And we're going to also go back to school. I'm going to teach you a little bit about why these things happen. Why do we have difficulty with losing weight or maintaining our weight loss? Next slide, please. So again, we're going to review the hormonal conditions associated with obesity, a few of them. We're also going to discuss the physiology of weight management. That's us going to school. And then discuss those changes in physiology that are associated with weight loss, which can, if are not normal, can lead to weight regain. Okay, next slide. So this is a hypothetical patient, but a lot of these things are very true to my patient population. So Erica is a 43-year-old African-American female who for an initial medical weight management visit. She reports being larger than the other children in elementary school, but this did not prevent her from participating in sports. Erica noted that she ate home-cooked meals about half the time as a child because she had a really busy schedule, and so she also had a lot of fast food. She did have access to sugar through a store at school that sold candy to raise money for school programs. And by the time she finished high school, she was about 10 pounds over what was deemed the normal weight for her age and her height. So after high school, she attended college and she did gain the freshman 15. She attributed this to eating in the dorm cafeteria, having more access to fast food, late night pizzas and burgers while she was studying. And then instead of being involved in like track and basketball and soccer, her physical activity primarily consisted of walking on campus to classes. And then she began having some regular periods and was evaluated by her doctor after gaining 25 pounds. And she was found to have a diagnosis of polycystic ovary syndrome. Next slide. So I want to go over this list of common but not exhaustive causes of weight gain, and that is polycystic ovary disease, thyroid disease, diabetes, increased cortisol states, as well as menopause. Next. So PCOS is a common type of hormonal imbalance in people who are born with ovaries. It can result in irregular periods, weight gain, infertility, acne, and excess hair growth. And that just has to do with the imbalance in the number of hormones. It's very common. Happens in up to 15% of women. And then about 40 to 80% of patients with PCOS have obesity and have trouble maintaining a healthy weight. Next slide. So thyroid disease. So your thyroid is a very tiny little hormone in your neck, but it controls your metabolism. So having a low thyroid or hypothyroidism can lead to weight gain. And then also, I've had some patients who had hyperthyroid, an overactive thyroid that once it was treated led to weight gain because their metabolism was revved up with hyperthyroidism. They may have lost weight, but then once it was slowed back down and within normal range, they actually began to gain weight. Next slide. So diabetes, which we are very commonly known about, and actually type 2 diabetes sometimes is called diabesity because it's associated with obesity, and it mainly results from insulin resistance. That's different from type 1 diabetes in patients who have the absence of insulin, but with type 2, it has to do with derangements in the metabolism and insulin production. So the insulin is the hormone in your body that gives the signal to store energy. And that's really important to note because every time that you eat, your insulin levels in a normal person, they rise, and it tells you to store energy. And what happens is with overnutrition, insulin resistance can happen because basically a patient may continue to consume food, but the cells in the muscles, fat tissue, and liver, they don't respond to those impulses or those signals from insulin to store energy. So I did create a little diagram to kind of show how that works. Next slide, please. So the yellow is fat, the middle part is like your liver and your heart muscle, and then you have your other muscles that are on that lower third of the slide. And these are some main areas that energy is stored. So ideally, you would only consume enough food to be able to store enough glucose to last you to your next meal. But if you can imagine, next slide. So all of these goes in there and it's stored, and then the insulin, then the blood sugar goes back down to a normal post meal state. So usually, what should happen is that you consume enough food or so every so often to be able to store enough glucose again to last you into your next meal. However, if someone is eating too much, too often, too quickly, then you're constantly having insulin levels be high and they're signaling to all these tissues, store energy, but those tissues get full. Next slide. That they become resistant to insulin telling them, to store energy. So they're stuffed full of glucose, and that glucose, depending on where it is actually transformed into fat. And so if the tissues, okay, are not responding to the signals of insulin and they're not storing any more glucose, that glucose is going to hang out in the bloodstream. And that's why you get the elevated blood sugar, because that glucose doesn't have anywhere to go. And that's kind of like a super simple way of explaining diabetes, but the converse is true. And if someone doesn't eat, the insulin levels go down, okay, fasting, and then that tells the body to release glucose or release fat, actually, like lipolysis, back into the bloodstream for energy. So that's diabetes in 25 words less. Next slide, please. So another really important hormonal state to consider when it comes to excess weight or obesity is increased cortisol. And so that can be endogenous or exogenous. By that I mean it could be increased cortisol based on someone's actual their body state, or because they're getting medications that are like cortisol. So cortisol is a steroid hormone that is released by your adrenal glands, and it helps to regulate your response to stress, your blood pressure, blood sugar, and also suppresses inflammation. So chronic stress can lead to chronically elevated cortisol that can lead to weight gain. It actually mimics the effect of like being on prednisone long term. In addition, getting cortisol in the form of like prednisone or mid-jaw dose packs. I have patients that have asthma and they are chronically on steroids, have a very difficult time with losing weight. I have patients that I treat for inflammatory bowel disease or some liver conditions that require courses of steroids. And one of the possible side effects that we discuss is that this could potentially cause you to gain weight. So we need to be mindful of that. Next slide. And then a big one, especially in my patient populations, because I do treat a lot of women in their 40s and 50s and so forth, is menopause. So menopause is when a woman has gone for 12 consecutive months without having the menstrual cycle. The average age of menopause is 51, but it's really important to note that those changes can start happening up to 8 to 10 years before you actually stop having a period. So if the average age is 51, then that means that around 40, you could also start having symptoms as well. And those symptoms are kind of common. We know about the hot flashes, night sweats, insomnia, irritability, and some women due to the changes in the hormones. So when you're basically your ovaries are starting to fail and not produce as much estrogen, but it's important to know that your ovaries also produce testosterone. And that's one of our hormones that helps to drive muscle mass. And so having those changes, in addition to changes in lifestyle, particularly like being too busy to exercise, increased alcohol consumption, eating a lot of carbohydrates, that can lead to that weight gain, especially around the abdomen. Next slide. So Erica was placed on oral contraceptives. Oh, sorry, go back, please. Thank you. She was placed on oral contraceptives and metformin to treat her PCOS. Just as an aside, the oral contraceptives help to regulate her period, and the metformin, which is a medication that many of you probably already heard of, help to address the insulin resistance of PCOS. And then with that, she began to have regular periods, and she also lost weight. So after college, she wasn't that much more active and started working a sedentary job, also had a pretty long commute. And so she just found it hard to get exercise and also began relying on prepared foods. And so over the next 10 years, she gained 100 pounds, about 10 pounds a year. And you might say, wow, that's a lot. Well, if you do the math and you know that a 1 pound of weight is about 3,500 calories. If you multiply that times 100 pounds and then divide it by all days in a year, in 10 years, it doesn't really take that much to gain that much weight in a year. Basically, it ends up being about a pack of M&Ms a day. So, or something equivalent to that. So someone is living their life, but they eat, a muffin, pack of M&Ms and donuts every day. At the end of that year, you're probably going to gain 10 pounds. If you keep doing it year after year, then before you know it, you're have severe obesity. So because of this weight gain, Erica had a gastric sleeve, which resulted in an 86-pound weight loss. It's important to note that you may not lose all the weight that you've gained, but certainly losing a substantial amount can be healthier. So, with the help of watching her diet as well as rigorous exercise, she kept this off for 4 years and then gradually gained back 50 pounds. She has since then tried changing her diet. She's done low carb, intermittent fasting, but had not been able to lose any of the weight regain. And then she also hurt her foot, and so she hadn't been able to exercise regularly since she's in pain. Okay, next slide. So this is where we're going to go to school, and I'm going to talk about ghrelin and leptin. They kind of sound like some names from some type of science fiction movie, but they're actually hormones in our body that help to manage our weight intake and expenditure, energy expenditure. Next slide. Um, Ghrelin is the only hormone in your body that tells you to eat, and it's released by your stomach. So when your stomach is empty, ghrelin is high, and it signals to your brain to get a bite. The ghrelin levels increase between meal times and decrease when the stomach is full. Interesting to note that those levels kind of wane over time. So let's just say somebody's doing fasting, and so they start the fast maybe like at whatever time at 6 o'clock in the evening. So they might have an increase in their ghrelin around 10, but if you just don't eat within an hour, that ghrelin level actually goes down again. So it kind of waxes and wanes during fasting periods. So if you're able to not eat, that desire to eat or the hunger actually will decrease. So in the overfed state, ghrelin is lower, and when fasting is high, as I just stated. Next slide. So leptin is kind of like an opposite hormone of the ghrelin. Remember, ghrelin tells you to eat. Well, leptin tells you to stop eating. It's a hormone that is released by your white adipose tissue, also known as fat, and it helps to regulate hunger. So it inhibits hunger and also regulates energy balance. It was only discovered in 1994, and that was around the time that I was starting medical school. I remember this. And so I think I have like some scars and shoes that are older than leptin. But in patients who have severe obesity, they have leptin resistance, which means that they don't respond normally to the signals of leptin, and they don't get full. They just don't ever get full, and ever don't have time to. They don't never get the desire to not eat. And so because they are resistant to the signals of leptin telling it to stop eating, they think they're starving and can continue to eat. Next slide, please. So it's a balance. Ghrelin is telling you to eat, and leptin is telling you not to eat. And so that's kind of simple way of looking at why do I get hungry? Why do I stop eating? Next slide. So I want to talk about the changes in physiology associated with weight loss. Okay, so certainly it's someone who has lost weight 10 pounds, 50, 100, there's going to be some physiologic changes. So when someone has lost a substantial amount of weight, three main things occur. So the first thing is that you get an increased ghrelin because you're not eating as much. So remember, if your stomach is empty, it's going to signal to your brain to eat. You get decreased leptin. Why? Because the amount of adipose or fat tissue that you have is directly proportional to your leptin. So if you have little fat, little leptin, a lot of fat, a lot of leptin. And remember, leptin tells you to not eat. So if someone has lost a lot of weight, they have high ghrelin because they have they have less fat tissue, they have low leptin, and so they're at risk of gaining weight because they're going to be hungrier and have less of an impulse to tell them to not eat. The next thing that's important to note is that with weight loss, there's going to be a lowered resting metabolic rate. That's just the energy expenditure that you use just sitting here doing nothing while you're like watching this webinar. Why is it low? Because our bodies are equipped to try to help us maintain homeostasis or maintain the same energy balance. And so when you lose a lot of weight, your body thinks that you're in a famine, that you're starving, and that you don't know when your next meal will come. So it ends up lowering your metabolic rate so that you can conserve energy sources that know you're going to eat again. So because your body's a body, it doesn't know that it doesn't know that you actually were trying to lose weight on purpose. Next slide. So want to look at what happens with ghrelin after weight loss. So in two different scenarios, someone who has lost weight, who has an intact stomach, as in they haven't had weight loss surgery, or they have been lost weight through using medications. And then what happens in someone who's had a weight loss surgery. So when you lose weight, I said before, you get increased ghrelin, and then over time, that can cause you to want to eat. But the interesting thing in patients who have had a gastric bypass or a gastric sleeve, you actually have immediately decreased ghrelin because, especially with the gastric sleeve, you're actually cutting out part of the stomach completely. And that is what makes ghrelin. So you don't have the tissue present to actually make it. So patients who have had gastric sleeves, they end up being just not hungry in the very beginning. But over time, that can increase. When it comes to gastric bypass, even though patients have part of their stomach intact and it's just like removed from their food stream, they also have a decreased ghrelin because they're actually not seeing food at all. But again, over time, those patients who have had gastric bypass, gastric sleeves, they're not immune. They've used the strongest tool to lose weight, but in the absence of constant pressure on maintaining that, they too can be able to gain weight as well. Next slide. Okay, and then I want to talk about decreased leptin. I mentioned before, leptin, as your body fat decreases as you lose weight, your leptin decreases. And remember, your leptin is the hormone that says stop eating. And then as your body fat increases, your leptin increases. And that's the one that should tell you to stop eating. However, in some patients who have severe obesity, they're resistant to leptin, so they're not able to respond to that signal to stop eating. Next slide. So do want to talk about decreased metabolic rate. And so with just a 10 to 15% weight loss, the resting metabolic rate decreases about up to, I should say, 205 calories a day. Okay. So after you've lost weight, it's important to note that you have to eat 300 to 400 fewer calories per day to maintain the same body weight of someone who has not, because of the decrease in metabolic rate. And this explains the need for almost daily exercise to maintain weight loss. Oftentimes I have patients that come to see me and it's like, oh, well, I exercise every day and haven't lost any weight. My question is, have you gained any? Because exercise helps you to maintain your muscle mass and to maintain your weight loss, but it's to maintain your weight. But by itself, it's not going to be able to help you to lose substantial weight. Next slide. So after a comprehensive evaluation, Erica was presented with several options to help her reach her weight management goals, including medical therapy and a possible surgical revision. She's considering her options and looking forward to resuming her medical weight management journey. And next slide. So just to kind of wrap things up, a number of conditions can be related to hormonal weight gain, and that can contribute to abnormal weight. The list I presented was not exhaustive. Testing for hormonal conditions should be included in a comprehensive evaluation for weight loss. It's important to note that obesity is really complex. It is not just calories in, calories out. It's not just eat less move more. It's really complex. It's important to understand all of the things that can contribute to someone's weight. We discussed hormonal today, but there are other things as far as psychological things, genetics that could also be topics for discussion. And then one thing that's really important to note that changes in resting metabolic rate can contribute to the risk of weight regain after weight loss. So exercise is so important, especially doing muscle resistance training to help to maintain weight loss after a significant loss. And I think that's it. Next slide. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I mean, Dr. Scott Winfield was such an informative and actionable presentation. And, we've got questions. I don't know about you guys, but I'm not looking at M&Ms the same way anymore. Not anymore. I can't thank you both enough for your time, your willingness to share your story, Keisha, your expertise, Doctor. And I want to also thank our community partners, Dr. Jourdain, President Bird, Ms. Johnson, and their respective organizations, as well as the Obesity Action Coalition for partnering with us for this event. And to let you know that this webinar has been made possible from an educational grant from Novo Nordisk. And on behalf of the Black Health Matters team and tonight's partners, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. And we hope to see you again.